Hello everyone and welcome to TV Talks, the show where I take a look at both the good and the bad of what television has to offer. And it's finally time to get Season 4 of The Simpsons out. After my wisdom teeth recovery is all done, what better way to celebrate than to get this video up and running? So let's recap. Season 3 was a huge season and it did very, very well in not just ratings but audience reception. Everybody absolutely loved it and The Simpsons was on fire. So naturally there was a lot of pressure on the creative staff to make this next season even bigger and better. Did they do it? Well, I think you already know, but again, for the sake of this video, let's just pretend you don't. It makes things more exciting. So a couple changes happened behind the scenes. First of all, a lot of writers left the show after Season 3. Why? I don't know. I don't know them all personally. Seems like some had better offers and some just wanted to move on to other things. So they got in a whole bunch of new ones, so they were taking a little bit of a gamble here. After all, when you exchange a large number of your staff, the show is going to change. But did it change for the better? Well, it's safe to say that it kinda did, because a lot of most classic episodes came from this season. And secondly, it seems like Matt Groening didn't have as much involvement in this one, as he wasn't a big showrunner in this one, as he had a lot more help from his other showrunners and other creators. Whereas the last couple seasons, he basically was at the helm the whole time. So let's see how that changed everything with episode 1 of season 4, Camp Krusty. Yep, we're starting the season right off with one of those all-time classic episodes. This episode's a bit of a downer, but in a very fun way. First of all, Bart can't get into Camp Krusty, which he's really wanting to do, so he works so hard to try to get there, and then when he finally does, it turns out that that place is a nightmare. And that's being nice. The whole place is dilapidated, it's run by Jimbo, Dolph, and Kearney, and Krusty himself is nowhere in sight. The whole thing is just miserable. So what do they decide to do? The campers decide to rise up and attack and claim what is theirs. In other words, the entire camp and everyone inside of it. All 3 acts in this episode, because of course this is the simple 3-act structure that normal TV episodes have. All 3 of them are entirely different. The first act is about Bart desperately trying to get into Camp Krusty to get his grades okay so that his parents will let him go. Although Homer doesn't take very much convincing, as after all, he is Homer Simpson. The second act is them just being absolutely miserable at the camp. Then the third act is the big rise up and destroying everything. Yay! All of it is a lot of fun and it just gets more and more exciting as it goes on. Also, the subplot with the parents of not just the Simpson kids, but every kid there is really funny to see and really fun to see. An overall classic and for very good reasons. Great writing and great story. Hail to thee, Camp Krusty. Which is a trademark, all rights reserved, so I shouldn't even really be saying that, so the copyright police will probably be knocking at my door pretty soon. And this is YouTube after all. Streetcar Named Marge. When I was a younger viewer of the show, I didn't really get this episode very much, because I couldn't quite tell what it was trying to do. Because back then I wasn't as big of a musical theater person as I am now, and of course I was a lot more, hey, this episode's not funny, so it can't be very good. I was one of those kids. I never really was able to appreciate the atmosphere. And of course, this is probably one of the most adult joke heavy of the Simpsons episodes. Not that it's the Family Guy or Bob's Burgers, Ren and Stimpy Adult Party kind of adult humor. I mean, it's more the sophisticated adult humor, like the way they'll act or what goes on in their lives. Scenarios that kids probably wouldn't get, or vocabulary or situations or reactions they wouldn't get. Except for the Maggie stuff, because there's a Maggie subplot in here that the younger folk might probably like, but this is probably more adult-oriented one because kids just probably wouldn't get what's going on. So Marge feels very unappreciated and she decides to audition for A Streetcar Named Desire, and she bombs at her audition. Very badly. She wants to be Blanche so bad, but of course she doesn't get it. But then when the director, who is played brilliantly by John Lovitz, he sees that she's being not really mistreated, but more neglected by Homer, and she feels miserable. He realizes that her spirit would be perfect to play the part of Blanche. And so there's a whole bunch of theater jokes there, and a whole bunch of in-jokes and director jokes especially, which I can relate. Interspersed with Homer being just kind of a negligent doofus. And while it does seem that he is a lot meaner and a lot less caring than usual, it's not done in a very nasty way. He's not really trying to be bad. He's just kind of like an 8-year-old in a giant fat gorilla body. He doesn't see anything as wrong, and the moment he realizes he messed up, he feels terrible, albeit Marge doesn't see it that way. But he really does. That story element is really good in here, and also the humor is very good and on point, especially the stuff that kids wouldn't get. Like how the director only wants to cast Stanley based off of the auditioner's abs. Or the past record of the director, that kind of stuff. Or just the director character in general. And of course, I must acknowledge that this episode got under heavy controversy in the day because of one of the songs. There are a couple songs in here, but the longest and most popular is the New Orleans song, which is a really great song. I love the beat. The vocals are really well done, even though Chief Wiggum is a little off-key in the beginning. Anyways, it's very well done, but the city of New Orleans was ticked off because of a lot of the lyrics and the way that it described the city as stinky, rotten, vomity, vile, and then it's the Sodom and Gomorrah of the Mississippi, stuff like that. Great beat, but yeah, not very nice lyrics. Although I guess they were kind of being a little overreacting, I guess, because, hey, New Jersey always gets this kind of rap, and they never complain. As far as I know. I mean, I don't live in New Jersey. I live on the other side of the country. But hey, everything was okay in the end because they apologized. So, great episode, even if it did get a little controversial in the third act. Our third episode is Homer the Heretic. So, one day Homer just decides he doesn't feel like going to church, which is understandable because Reverend Lovejoy's sermons are about as interesting as Tar. If that. And while he does this, Marge is very worried about his soul and then tries to get him to go to church and tries to get him to lighten up. Of the season, it's probably one of the more forgettable ones, and it's actually not aired very much even when they air season 4, because they air season 4 quite a bit. But this one seems to just kind of fly under the radar. Why is this? I honestly have no idea. I mean, the episode's pretty good. It's not bad by any means. It's just because of how little attention it's been getting, it's become more forgettable. But when I watch it, I keep remembering all the good jokes that happen in this. And even though The Simpsons does take pot shots at religion quite a bit, this isn't one of the times where it's offensive or where it goes too far. Because there are times, especially towards the later seasons, where it does do that. But this actually is done very well, because this kind of stuff does happen. It almost makes me think that this is what happened to one of the writing staff people. It is a little bit more story-focused, but the comedy that is there is well done. It's not going to win any awards anytime soon, or at least I don't think it will. But it's not a bad one, and I definitely say if it's on, give it a shot, because hey, it's not going to be around very much. So, Lisa the Beauty Queen. This one gets aired quite a bit, as opposed to our last one. So Lisa feels ugly and unwanted and, typical stuff that happens for a girl her age. So Homer feels really bad for her, and after he wins a ride on the Duff Blimp, he feels that Lisa's self-confidence is more important. So he ends up selling that to get her into a beauty contest, which she wants no part of. But when she sees just how far Homer went to make her feel good, she decides to give it a try. And she gets second place. Yeah, so the main character isn't the winner in this one. She doesn't come out on top. She kind of almost sort of gets a happy ending. But then she does get her happy ending when the real winner, Amber Dempsey, gets struck by lightning. So then she becomes Little Miss Springfield, and she becomes extremely corrupt and kind of social justice warrior-esque. Although some of the stuff she is standing up for is actually a really good cause, like not getting children to smoke. But then, of course, they find some loophole in the end to get her ousted, and everything's back to normal, except Lisa now feels better about herself. Yeah, this is definitely a humor one, but if you look into it just a little bit, you can see the great story potential. Like I said, Homer being an extremely caring father, this is one of the most caring moments we've seen him ever. Because we know how much Homer loves Duff Beer and how much he loves, fun times and making a fool of himself, which most surely would have happened in the Duff Blimp. But he can't do that. He gave it all up for his daughter. Granted, it's something she wanted no part of, but he feels like this would really help make her happy. And all the pageant jokes are great in this. Every single joke hits its mark, even the stupid one at the end with the loophole, which is basically just a Deus Ex Machina to get everything going back to normal and the status quo, but it's still funny. And it's something that Homer would do. And actually, it's something that I almost did as a joke for one of my audition forms for the theater group I'm in. Yeah. The episode is a great one. It's a classic. A lot of heart, a lot of laughs, a lot of everything you could want in a Simpsons episode. Ooh, the third Treehouse of Horror. So, and again, this one has the 3 stories, and this one has a bit of an interesting framing device. Granted, they all have the framing device up to this point, but this one has a really good one. They're being at a Halloween party, and then they're sharing scary stories. The first one's about a crusty doll that comes to life and attacks everybody. The second one is a parody of King Kong, with Homer as King Kong, and then the third one is a zombie story. In my personal opinion, the stories get less and less good as they go on, only because the first one is just really, really good. The first story, the Krusty Doll one, is one of the quintessential Treehouse of Horror stories. Everything about it is great, there's a lot of great humor, and it's actually genuinely creepy at some parts. Good going. The second one is not bad by any means, it's actually really good. It's just not quite as good as the first one, because that's a tough act to follow. And has a lot of really good jokes, and Smithers does have my favorite line in the entire short. Which, if you want to know what it is, go ahead and check it out. It's a double entendre that really proves what Smithers' real interests are. The third one is definitely a good one, but albeit a little less memorable than the other 2. But it definitely is the best Treehouse of Horror thus far. Each one seems to get better and better because they're able to push more boundaries and know more of what they want to do. So they're really going in stride and really knowing what they're doing. The first one was a fun little experiment, the second one was a bit more of a solidified example of what's to come, and then this one's just all out fun. So why bother to complain? Well, I don't see any reason, so next one. Itchy and Scratchy the movie. So Bart is a horrible, horrible child, as we all know, causing a lot of trouble. And Homer is not very strict? What? I'll get to that in a minute. So Homer can't get a punishment that sticks to Bart? What? Okay, moving on. So at one point there's an Itchy and Scratchy movie coming out, and everybody is obviously obsessed with it. And when Bart messes up by letting Maggie drive a car, he can't go to see it. And it's about Homer sticking to his punishment. What? Okay, a big problem with this episode. Homer is a big punishment person. Hello, he's the strangler? He strangles Bart whenever he messes up and scares him into not doing bad things. Homer definitely is a punishment person. Since when has he been soft? He's been soft on Lisa, yeah, but Lisa doesn't really mess up very much. You better believe he's the one that knocks sense into Bart. It's Marge that's really loose with him. Marge is the wishy-washy one that won't want to punish him. Although she does, she's definitely not happy about doing it because, of course, Bart is her, as she calls him, her sweet little guy. Homer is a brute. He's a thug. Of course he'd want to do this. That bump aside, the episode is fantastic. Whenever I watch it, I always think it's going to be a comedy one, but no, it actually is an interesting character study in, albeit not the best portrayal of Homer, but still a good one. It actually is really good to see Homer kind of growing as a person and sticking to his guns. And we see just how upset Bart gets, and he is a little flanderized in the beginning with just how insane he is. Bart does cause trouble, but he does it for fun. This is just like if he had mental issues, I think. But it's, again, for story. It takes a lot of liberties with the characters, especially Bart and Homer, but in the end, it's all good, and the jokes that are here are great, especially the novel joke, and the joke about how nobody who's seen the Itchy and Scratchy movie would ever say that you'd get tired of it. But my favorite joke is a very small one. It's where Lisa says that Michael Jackson and Dustin Hoffman were in the movie, but they didn't use their names, but you could tell it was them by their voices. Does that sound familiar? Both of those people were on The Simpsons and did the exact same thing. So yeah, like I said, a little bit strange in the character portrayal, but good everywhere else. Marge gets a job. Marge feels very unfulfilled in life, so she decides to go and get a job at the nuclear plant where Mr. Burns falls in love with her. Okay, creepy. But real quick, this is definitely one of the first episodes where we really see Smithers' true rainbow colors, if you get what I'm meaning. Now, there's been a lot of hints dropped beforehand, but this one pretty much confirms that Smithers is, Well, as you know what they say, if he was gay, that'd be okay. Cause hey, we'd like him anyways. Let me know if you got that reference. Anyways, I always think this is a Season 2 episode. Well, I used to before I did the Season 2 video. I don't know what it is. The animation's not the same, the writing style's not the same, but it just seems like one of the concepts that Season 2 would try out. Because, Season 2 was a very experimental one. And hey, they could have used some Marge episodes, remember? But this episode is very, very fast-paced. It seems like they had a lot of stories and a lot of jokes they wanted to tell with this episode, but they really wanted to cram it all in. Now, the fast pace isn't really a problem, it's just, wow, it really feels like it goes by fast. Which, hey, I guess that's kind of the point of watching TV, it's supposed to feel like it goes by really quickly. And yeah, they throw a lot of great stuff in there, it's really fast energy, really fast pace, really well done. My favorite part is easily Marge's resume and how many liberties she takes. First she says she's a chef and a chauffeur, which, stay-at-home moms are. But then there's stuff like where she knows fluent French and then invented a bunch of nuclear machines. It's great. It just escalates more and more. It's great. It's really funny. And now, new kid on the block. Before I talk about this episode, I want to tell you who wrote this one. So there's a lot of up-and-coming writers that came into this season, as I told you. A lot of the old ones came out and a lot of new ones came in. So, this one has a very interesting writer. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a little-known comedian by the name of Conan O'Brien. That's right, the same Conan O'Brien who used to have that hilarious talk show wrote this episode. And not only that, but he wrote a few others this season too, including an extremely famous one coming up in just a couple episodes. So yeah, let's see how Conan O'Brien's first foray into The Simpsons went. It went pretty well. So Ruth Powers moves in next door to The Simpsons, and she has a daughter who Bart falls in love with. Now they're falling in love with someone who's a completely different age than you. And he tries to act all adult and mature and sophisticated and tries to impress her. But then she ends up falling for Jimbo Jones. The episode is a little conventional when it comes to The Simpsons stories, which again makes it sound like it's going to be cliched and typical, but a lot of the jokes they throw in, again, are really well done. For one, Moe actually follows up with one of his threats. You know how he always says that he's going to kill Bart or, rip off his arms and punch him in the face with his own fist whenever he gets the prank call? Well, yeah, now he actually tries to track him down. There's also great jokes about all the gifts Ruth Powers gets when she moves in, and of course, just how crazy her daughter is. And what a scumbag Jimbo is, of course. And Bart desperately trying to get her attention and desperately trying to seem cool and suave and mature is always really funny to see, especially when Lisa makes fun of him for this. It's a simple episode for sure, but it's definitely one that's worth watching. And I've said that for a lot for these episodes. But of course the next one's worth watching, but we've already seen it millions of times. What is it? It's Mr. Plow. That's his name. That name again is Mr. Plow. Mr. Plow is one of the most famous episodes of The Simpsons ever. Ever. We all know this one. Homer buys a snowplow and then opens a plow business. And then Barney opens a plow business and then they fight over it. Every single joke in this entire episode hits on point every time. Especially the late, great Adam West's bits. Now, Adam West died a couple days ago, may God rest his soul, and he appeared in this episode, and I'm not just saying this because I miss the guy, but his parts are genuinely the funniest. Just how obsessed he was with the old Batman and how he doesn't like the Tim Burton movies, and hey, buddy, wait till you see the Joel Schumacher stuff. But he's talking about and why doesn't Batman dance anymore? Remember this? And then Homer gets scared and tries to get the kids to back away. There's the jokes about, do you come with the car? And Homer being whipped into getting the snowplow. And then there's their hilarious commercial and the kind of people who would watch it. How far Barney goes to get an unfair competition. And all the people who are more satisfied with Barney than Homer. It just builds and builds. The episode is great. It's hilarious. One of the funniest episodes thus far in the show. Why bother keep talking about it? Because let's face it, you've all seen it. But hey, if you haven't, what are you waiting for? And we come to another flashback episode in our next one, Lisa's first word. So everyone's trying to get Maggie to talk, because Maggie doesn't talk. Or does she? Dun dun dun. Everyone's trying to get Maggie to talk, and then this causes them to remember Bart and Lisa's first word. Albeit Bart's just lasts about 10 seconds, not 10 minutes. And so Lisa's first word is about Lisa getting conceived and born, and it's actually pretty interesting to see what the Simpson family was like. How Bart was, yeah, he was a troublemaker, but he was a pretty cute kid. And how he just couldn't call Homer Daddy or Dad, he had to just call him Homer. They lived in a pretty low-rent area of Springfield with a pretty cruddy apartment. And Bart did such wonderful, wonderful things like flushing Homer's wallet and keys down the toilet. So they got a little concerned when Lisa was coming around, which of course Lisa was an accident, just like Bart and Maggie were. Geez, don't these people be careful? Can't they be careful for once? Anyways, they go and check out the house. They get introduced to the Flanderses, as Homer would say. And right away he borrows something from Ned, which is a big theme in the show, that Homer keeps borrowing things from Flanders, and he never ever gives them back. And then the second half of the episode, after the whole finding a new house and adjusting to new life, the whole second half is about Bart absolutely hating Lisa because, well, Lisa is the new kid, and as a lot of oldies would remember, whenever the second one comes around, you tend to feel jealous because they're paying more attention to the baby than they are to you, and that really doesn't make you feel good. But Bart takes it even more extreme, like trying to sell Lisa or trying to send her away in the post or getting rid of her by any means or shaving her head. But it's not because he's a troublemaker, it's just that he misses all the attention and he feels neglected. But then he finds out that Lisa really does care about him when her first word is Bart. And then they start bonding. But then, of course, 8 years later, that doesn't really stay. The episode is great heart, great character development, and great jokes. But the best part in the entire episode, we all know what it is, the last 10 seconds of the episode. Because Maggie, for the first time, talks. But nobody's around to see it, of course. Now, just like Bart, Lisa didn't want to call Homer Daddy or Dad. It was just Homer. It's not like she couldn't say that. I mean, she could say David Hasselhoff. But Maggie's first word, which Homer never got to hear, was Daddy. No matter which iteration of the episode you watch, because there are like 3 different versions of the way Maggie says Daddy. It just depends on the version you come across. It's a great little episode, and it really gives you a good history of the show. And it's a very well done episode. What more can I say? Well, I know what I can say. The next episode is Homer's Triple Bypass. Oh boy. So, Homer has a heart attack because of his very poor health and eating habits. Because, hey, he's Homer Simpson. That's what he does. And the whole episode is about the family being worried about him and trying to get him fixed. Even when the procedure is really expensive, they have to turn to Dr. Nick. Oh boy. Dr. Nick is a notoriously bad doctor. He went to Hollywood Upstairs Medical College and knows nothing about human anatomy. He's a character that grows on you. I used to think he wasn't very funny, but now I kind of get a lot more of a shtick. So, like Camp Krusty, this one's a bit of a downer, but it's, unlike Camp Krusty, is not a funny episode. It doesn't try to be funny, of course, and except for Dr. Nick. But does it work? Phew, yeah, it does. This one is kind of on the same level as the Blowfish episode from season 2. Not quite to that degree, but it is pretty worrying and pretty upsetting. Because it kind of makes it seem like Homer's not going to be okay because he's near death now. This was a triple bypass. You don't just walk off that thing, you have to go through massive surgery. And we already know that the Simpson family isn't exactly the wealthiest, so affording that kind of procedure is almost a no-go. Kind of makes you wonder what's going to happen. Well, it would if you didn't already know that he was going to be okay, because it's an episodic show that doesn't kill off characters. Wink, wink. Foreshadowing a few seasons. Anyways, the whole episode is a really well done story piece. The most serious episode thus far in the season. And I gotta say, it was a big risk, but they pulled it off well. And hey, this episode is referenced many times later on, where it shows that Homer does have a bad heart and has a lot of heart condition stuff. But you remember when I said Conan O'Brien wrote a super famous episode? Well, it's not Homer's Triple Bypass, but the next one. Say it with me now, Marge versus the Monorail. Conan O'Brien wrote this one too, and it shows. This one has his style of humor all over it. And this one is one of the most upbeat yet almost sinister kind of episode that they've had yet. This one is really upbeat and fun. It's got a lot of great jokes in it. Oh man, Phil Hartman as Lyle Lamley. This is one of his best performances yet. I mean, I love Troy McClure and all, and Lionel Hutz is still really good, but this guy is great. He's an evil con man who's willing to destroy towns and kill people to get a bunch of money, but he never stops smiling. He's always bouncy and happy and excitable. In fact, he has a really great song that's in the middle of this episode, the Monorail song, which we all know what that sounds like. Everyone's really excited for the monorail, and Homer becomes the conductor. Leonard Nimoy's in it and is great as always. But like I said, Conan O'Brien's style of humor is all over this one. Just watch this episode again and picture him at the helm writing this one. Don't tell me you can't see the similarities. This is another one of the most famous episodes in the entire show, and for very good reason. Jeez. With all these super famous, super good episodes, how am I possibly going to pick a best episode this season? Well, you'll just have to wait and see. It's another hard one to talk about because, again, everybody knows all about this one. Everything about this one is just great. It's hilarious. It's wonderful. Everything about it works. So, why keep going? Because there's not much else to say. Up next is what I think might be the most underrated in the entire season, Selma's Choice. Why do I call it underrated? Because people don't talk about it very much. Like Homer the Heretic, this one doesn't really get that much airtime, but whenever it does, and whenever my season 4 DVD box set is not nearby, I make sure to watch it, because this one is really, really funny, and also has some great development for Selma, because for once we see the difference between Patty and Selma, because they are not in fact the same person. Patty is a grump, Patty's a jerk, Patty wants to be alone forever, but Selma's kind of a hopeless romantic. She wants a man, she wants to start a family. Even if it is cliched, she's desperate, even willing to go to Hans Moleman, that creepy little dwarf guy. It's really funny to see all the lengths she goes to, and also really, really sad. You really feel for her, and you really see what she's going through. The episode doesn't take much time to develop it, but the way it develops it, you get it within a few seconds. And this one made me like Selma way more than Patty. This episode is great. It has a lot of laughs on top of that. The Duff Gardens bit is a classic. Whenever you go to Universal Studios, whether it be Florida or Hollywood, I usually go to Hollywood because that's closer by, they would play the Duff Gardens bit a lot when you're waiting for the Simpsons ride, which is my personal favorite in the lot, because I'm a huge Simpsons nut. Anyways, that's irrelevant. So, they play this a lot with Lisa drinking the water, and then my dad's personal favorite quote on the entire show, I can see the music. It's funnier in context. And then there's Homer's little bit with the sandwich, and then singing Ding Dong, the witch is dead, which old witch, the wicked witch, when they're going to a funeral. Everything about it is great. Every single joke hits its mark, and hits its mark very, very well. So yeah, why doesn't this one get talked about a lot? Why isn't this one of the most famous ones? Well, who knows? But maybe if word can get around about how good this one is, maybe, just maybe, things can change for Selma's Choice. So let's just move on to Brother from the Same Planet, which I always think is the second Herb episode for some reason. I don't know why. But here is Brother from the Same Planet. So Homer is a terrible father, as we have said, and so whatever happened to Itchy and Scratchy the movie. Anyways, Bart decides to go out and seek a new father figure in another Phil Hartman appearance. But the guy's an action-packed military guy who shows Bart a great time, and then Homer gets jealous, so then he adopts Ronaldo from a future episode. It's kind of weird how they reuse his model, but that's not really important. So then they have kind of a rivalry with their other brother, other son kind of thing. It's hard to explain, but it's basically just a who's better kind of competition. And it's pretty good. It's, of course, a pretty popular one. There's a really good Ren and Stimpy joke in here. The character of Tom is really fun. And just how desperate Homer is to try to seem cool and a wise old fatherly figure is hilarious. Another kind of simple one, really easy to talk to. I don't really think I'm going to keep going on because we've got a really big one coming up next. So, yeah, Brother from the Same Planet is good. That's all I can really say about it. Ooh, okay, so, yep, let's just get on with the big one. I Love Lisa. That's the name of the episode. So, out of all the characters The Simpsons can make you feel for, Homer, Bart, Lisa, Flanders, even Principal Skinner, we've felt for all of them at some time, but did you ever once think you could feel sorry for Ralph Wiggum, the dumbest kid in the entire show, who's pretty much created the term Ralphism, which is basically a nonsensical, stupid phrase that just means nothing, like, me feel English? That's impossible! Stuff like that. Or Super Nintendo Chalmers. Ralph is definitely not the brightest bulb in the socket. In fact, he's actually just a burnt out bulb entirely. But we finally see a new angle with this. Because Ralph is kind of a dumb kid who's got a lot of issues, nobody really likes him. And normally we see Ralph as this happy-go-lucky, upbeat kid, but it turns out he really feels bad about this. Because on Valentine's Day, he doesn't get anything. He doesn't get any Valentine's cards or anything. And he feels really upset. And Lisa feels super bad for him, as one would. So she decides to give Ralph a Valentine just to show, hey, we're friends, it's okay, you don't have to feel sad. But Ralph takes it the wrong way. He thinks Lisa likes him. Likes him. Now, she doesn't really want to lead him on or anything, but she doesn't want to break his heart either, because she knows how upset and lonely Ralph is, and she doesn't want to hurt him, but Ralph thinks that Lisa's just trying to play hard to get, so he's doing whatever he can to win her over. You don't know who to root for this one, because on the one hand, you don't want Lisa to be in an unhappy relationship, but on the other hand, you really feel for Ralph. Even if you haven't been in this kind of scenario, you know what he's going through, and you know this kid. Whether you were or you were in the same class as this kid, you know what they're going through. You know how lonely they are, and Ralph feels terrible. Who would have thought this kid with such great lines like, I bent my Wookiee, and a whole bunch of other really ridiculous stuff would have actually been this relatable and this sweet to watch? And that part where they're at the Krusty's big show, oh, that is heartbreaking. That is even sadder than the entirety of Homer's triple bypass in my eyes. Yeah, man. Wow. And of course, everything has a really happy ending at the end with a little bit of optimism. It really kind of would be sweet to see them get together, but if Lisa really doesn't want it, why force it? And Ralph kind of realizes that, but hey, they stay friends. The whole episode's great, really well done. I really wish they kind of would have done something like this with Ralph again later on, but I guess if you're gonna make lightning strike twice, you better have something really darn good, and I guess that, well, nothing could top this one. And I can kind of see that. This is, to what I think, the only episode that stars Ralph entirely. Now, there is This Little Wiggy in Season 9, which heavily features Ralph, but it's not one that all-out stars him. So yeah, good going, Ralph. Good going. Duffless. Homer gets drunk at the Duff Brewery when he skips work, and so then he decides to go without beer for 30 days, and he goes insane, to put it lightly. After all, Homer is quite the drunk and quite the alcoholic, so of course we all expected this is going to go smoothly, right? No, it doesn't. Homer goes absolutely manic and insane, he gets desperate, he realizes how boring baseball is without alcohol, all that sort of stuff. Not only is it really funny, but again, it has a sweet side to it when it shows that he doesn't really want alcohol, but he just wants to spend time with Marge. That's going to be what gives him the kick. Until a couple episodes where he just decides to start drinking again. Now, this would have had an even bigger impact if Homer didn't drink after this. Granted, we would have lost Moe and Barney, probably, but it still would have been really nice to see, and a little bit of nice continuity, because that's the picture it paints at the end, that Homer's going to stop for good. Or at least he's going to try. But no, we don't really get any sort of thing. In fact, he actually kind of gets worse. So this episode's all kind of for nothing. But what this episode is still really good. Really sweet, a lot of good jokes. Saying the same thing about a lot of these episodes, but what can I say? They all have the same perks to them. Last exit to Springfield, Watch Mojo's favorite episode. I don't like Watch Mojo at all, just to put it lightly, and I'll explain why some other day. But yeah, they rank this as the best Simpsons episode ever. while I don't know if I could go that far, yeah, they got a point. This one's a really good one. So it's about Homer needing a dental plan for Lisa's new braces. Dental plan. Lisa needs braces. Dental plan. Although that joke goes on a little long, everything else is great. So Homer decides to become a union leader, and then they decide to strike at the plant. Well, this is a pretty story-ish one. The story that is there is really good. The humor is wonderful. With the Grinch reference and the British Book of Smiles, the dentist character is wonderful. I really wish they would have brought him back for more, because he's almost like the dentist from Little Shop of Horrors, just without all the charisma. He's just like, instead of loving being a sadist, he's just, basically motionless. It's great. And then there's all the stuff Homer tries to do as the union leader and how incompetent he is, but he still manages to get work done. And then the second half, or rather the third act, I'd say, kind of takes a little bit more of a story angle, where it shows that Homer has this responsibility and he's going to make sure everything is okay in the end. And he goes through a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hardship, and a lot of perseverance, but he eventually is able to stand up for what's right against the evil Mr. Burns. And the strike song is one of my favorite in the entire show. It's simple, it's just a guitar, it's just people singing, but I still have it on the soundtrack, and I still love it. It's a great, easy one, and it kind of does make you feel a little inspired when you hear it. Partially due to Yeardley Smith's great singing voice. This episode perfectly blends everything, and although it has a completely different shift in tone, it really does blend well, because it just feels like a natural progression the episode should take. If it was going to be kind of a serious one the whole way around, it wouldn't really make sense with Homer just all of a sudden becoming competent. And if it was going to just stay humor one the whole way around, it wouldn't really have the seriousness or the weight to it. But the way that it blends, you don't really notice unless you just start thinking about it. That's a great way to change the tone in the middle of an episode. Do it so subtly and so naturally that the audience can't help but not recognize it. That's how it should be done, not just abruptly changing it midway through. This one has really great writing, not just in the humor and the story, but also in the mechanics, as I just mentioned. Last exit to Springfield? Let's exit here and go check it out. Bad pun, doesn't even really make sense, but hey, I'm just kind of stalling for the next one. And the title kind of explains it all. So it's come to this, a Simpsons clip show. So, on April Fool's Day, Bart goes too far on a prank, and then sends Homer to the hospital, because he's drinking again. Yay. Everyone hates clip shows, especially when they're on a DVD box set. They're just kind of seen as lazy, cheap things thrown together, but this one has a reason behind it. It actually has a couple. First of all, DVDs and VHSs, DVD wasn't really a big thing, and VHS kind of was, but you couldn't really get a whole season's worth on VHS. And you just have to wait for all these best moments to come around on TV. And that's what the clip shows serve to do, is to kind of remind you and just show you some of the greatest hits. Now, these days, they're seen as horrible and antiquated, and if a show, these days, like, I don't know, Steven Universe or Regular Show or SpongeBob had a clip show, that would be seen as terrible and lazy, because not only DVDs and Blu-ray exist, but also YouTube, where you could just look up those moments, except if Viacom tries to kill you for uploading them. But also, there's another reason. This season was expensive. With all the guest stars they had, which being a record number thus far, and some of the big stuff they've done, like a lot of... They did pick great ones to do, though, and it progressed naturally. Very well done with this one, actually. But even still, it is a clip show. It's not bad at all. Not at all. It's just kind of there. There's no need for it these days, but to be fair, it's not their fault. It's not like they would have known that clip shows would have become outdated. But, take it for what it is. It's a clip show. The front. Bart and Lisa think that Itchy and Scratchy's going massively downhill, so they decide to write a script for the show and it gets canned. But then when they put Grandpa Simpson, who we find out his name is Abraham Simpson in this one, they put his name on it, all of a sudden it gets on the show and he's a big hit. He's like the next Walt Disney. Or I guess the next Roger Myers. And so, Grandpa gets all this attention just for doing nothing and pretending that he's writing stuff. He doesn't even know what Itchy... what Itchy and Scratchy is, really. It's kind of crazy, but it's really funny. And just how oblivious he is. And when he tells Homer that he gets paid to tell a cat and mouse what to do, Homer's thought of bringing him to the nut house is great. All the stuff that Lisa and Bart try to do to make the episodes are great as well. The jokes about the repeating background is really funny too. But there's one little thing about this episode. It's too short. And I think the producers realized that because they tagged on a 1-minute short at the end of it. Which, although doesn't really stretch out the runtime very much, yeah, there's, you could tell they were kind of stretching for filler, because there are some parts in this that kind of linger here and there, and then there's the short at the end. Everyone loves Ned Flanders, which of course is hilarious, and it's a great Flanders joke, which kind of led to some Flanderization later on, but it's still really funny, and you don't expect it, so it comes out of nowhere, and it's great. Again, so many things have been great in this one, and I keep saying it so much. Great. But yeah, very well done, albeit some lingering pace sometimes. Sorry about that. Some lingering pace sometimes, and sometimes you just kind of want it to keep going. But that ending scene at the award ceremony makes it all worth it. So we're on to our final 3. Whacking Day. It's almost like Weasel Stomping Day, but came out way before. There's a town holiday called Whacking Day, where everybody in Springfield just gets giant wooden clubs and bash snakes with them. Yeah, that would totally fly today. But Lisa doesn't really like this. She is determined to stop it. And of course, well, desperate to try to get to stop, she goes as far as she can to make sure that the snakes are safe, eventually dragging Homer along with her. And then of course Bart gets expelled from school eventually, and then gets homeschooled by Marge, and of course he loves it. No, he hates it. The episode is another classic, albeit I think it's still good. It's just not quite a classic in my eyes. I mean, I do love it. The whole Whacking Day thing is hilarious and how far everyone takes it. But I just think it kind of pales in comparison to some of the other monster hits this season has turned out. Like I said, it's not a bad thing by any means. The episode's still great. It's just that when it comes to the other ones in this season, it's just not quite up to snuff. Marge and Shane, speaking of not quite up to snuff, there's this one. Now, that's not really a bad thing, but it's kind of, in my eyes, like Whacking Day, but in a normal episode. Marge and Shane is not a classic episode, and I think that's kind of fine. It's not okay, it's not bad, but it is good. Just, of the good ones this season's probably Marge has to take care of everybody in the house because everybody's sick, and so, yeah, she ends up accidentally shoplifting, and then she's in jail, and then spends time in jail, and then gets out. The first act is really funny with the juicer and the sick jokes and all. That's great, but when she actually starts going to jail, it's good. It's good. Just good. That's kind of it. There's nothing really else to it, but it's just kind of simple, typical jail jokes. I don't really know what else to say. It's good, it's fine. Kind of like Homer the Heretic, only a little bit below that, I'd say. It's good. But that's just kind of about it. So our last one, Krusty gets canceled. There's a huge monster hit show called Gabbo coming out, and it wipes Krusty off the face of the earth. So with the help of a bunch of talented celebrities he knows, he tries to stage a comeback show to rise up against the evil Gabbo. And yes, Gabbo is evil. And they parody a lot of celebrity culture with this Gabbo guy, like what he says off camera, all the gimmicks he tries, what a nasty person the star is, while his co-star is just kind of silent and doesn't really get any attention, that kind of stuff. That's basically the whole first half. And then all the stuff Krusty tries is great, like his dummy, and of course, the best part in the entire episode, Worker and Parasite, because Itchy and Scratchy went to go to the Gabbo show, he has to go and get Eastern Europe's favorite cat and mouse duo, and it's awful. And that's why it's so funny. The second half is definitely good still, with all these celebrities doing great things that play off their personalities, even if they are a little stretched, but hey, it's a cartoon, that's expected. It's really well done, and it's actually more of a Krusty episode than it is about the Simpson family. While yes, they do play a part, most specifically Bart and Lisa, it's a Krusty episode first and foremost. And hey, Krusty gets to be added to the list of people who've moved in with the Simpsons. Yay! Very well done and a very good way to cap off the season because it has everything they had in this whole season. Good story, good heart, good jokes, and a lot of celebrities and a lot of good show-stopping numbers. What more do you need? But yeah, Krusty Gets Canceled was not the mark of where the show gets canceled because it kept going and going and going. But yeah, really good one. And what else can I say about Season 4 except it definitely is the best season thus far. And gets the Archibald seal of approval, bar none. Not one, I repeat, not one of these episodes was bad. That's a first for the whole show. And not one was even really okay. The closest, I think, would by default have to be the clip show, but it's still decent. I mean, the stuff they throw in that's new is good, and the clips they picked were really well done. It's just that, well, it's a clip show. You kind of have to put it at the bottom, but it's not like it did anything wrong. So we've gotten to that point where none of the episodes really deserve to be at the bottom. But then comes the impossible question on which one is the best one. Now, I want to give some honorable mentions after I name my favorite. But my favorite in the end has to be, by a slim margin, Marge versus the Monorail. Because, like I said, it has everything. It has everything you need. With Phil Hartman, the great numbers, good story, good laughs, good everything. Like I keep saying throughout the whole thing, because that's what all these things have. But I'll get to that in just a minute. But the runner-ups were A Streetcar Named Marge, Mr. Plow, Selma's Choice, I Love Lisa, and Last Exit to Springfield. Those ones were all greatly contested to be my favorites, but they just barely missed out by Marge vs. the Monorail. No wonder everyone loves this one so much. It's fantastic. Yeah, really good one. And of course, a great number too. So like I said, this whole season has just great everything. The last season was really good too, but this one stepped it up a lot. It got infinitely better, and that was already a pretty hard act to follow. With great episodes like Stark Raving Dad and all, some people thought that they played their trump cards too early, but no, they were saving everything they got for the next seasons to come. And of course, this is around the time when the show hit monster level. It was already on fire, but now it's a monster, and it can't be stopped. It's taking over Fox, and it's taking over our culture. And who wants to stop The Simpsons? Because as they say themselves, they'll never stop The Simpsons. Have no fears, they have stories for years. Yeah. On a side note, look at that song now, and half the stories they mentioned in that song they've actually done now. Not like the joke stories that they said, like Mo getting a cell phone or Marge becoming a robot. They've actually kind of done all that stuff now. Oh, that's going to be fun to talk about in season 27 or whatever we're on now. But anyways, season 4, amazing season, wonderful season. Check it out if you haven't already for whatever reason. But if you already have, check it out again. Because a lot of these episodes you have to watch more than once to get all the jokes in there. And with that, I'll see you guys in season 5. Good night, everybody.